Hey everyone, welcome back to Chasing Returns. This is episode 4. I'm your host JJ.
I'm Zach. We've made it
Uh,
4 episodes.
yeah, month. Here we
Isn't there a
go.
stat that podcasts, like a small percentage of podcasts make it past episode 3? I
I think so.
think
Yeah,
we've
so
made it.
we've done it. Yeah,
We've accomplished everything.
we've accomplished everything in our dreams. We can quit now.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, let's jump into it. I don't know if we did introductions. I'm JJ.
I'm Zach.
Today's gonna be a shorter episode because Zach is busy in the real world and is heading out to a conference that he is very excited about, which I wish I was joining him on. We can get into that maybe a little bit briefly. I'm sure we're gonna have a lot about that next week. But yeah, let's jump into it. So earnings is obviously, or it's earnings season right now.
Yeah, and you know what that means for everyone who's an investor, it's a great time. For public accountants like me, it's awful. It's just a really busy time, but we're working on getting those reports ready for you guys to read.
Yeah, which ironically you like reading though is the other thing.
Right.
You do the work that you don't
I
like,
don't like
and then read other people's works that you do enjoy.
Yeah. I mean, it's I don't hate it. It's a busy time.
Oh yeah, it's just time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you'd rather just enjoy it versus having to do the work on it too.
Right.
But,
And this is like the peak week of earnings. Like,
yeah, I was gonna say.
so we got three of the five big tech, unless you want to count Tesla in that, which I don't. But
which I do.
right. And we have Amazon coming out tomorrow. But today Meta reported, and yesterday Alphabet did, and Microsoft.
Well, I was gonna say, you want to hop into briefly kind of what we saw out of like Microsoft and Apple?
Yeah, I think Apple's next week, but
Facebook, sorry.
Yeah.
Facebook.
So I mean, I don't really have much to say on these because every quarter it's like the same thing. It's like revenue's up. They spent a bunch on CapEx. They spent a bunch on R&D. They bought back a ton of shares. They just kill it quarter after quarter. They're growing over time. So I don't think there's that much interesting to say. I think Meta's may have been more interesting because they cut back on spending a little bit on the metaverse, I believe, but I didn't have too much time to read that one. Microsoft's was interesting because cloud continues to kill it. And surprisingly, LinkedIn is like one of the fastest growing parts of, yeah. And then I think Xbox is like their slowest grower.
But Xbox, I believe I saw on the gaming news side of things, which I still briefly follow. Used to be a lot more into it than I am now, but I believe Xbox had or won the quarter for sales over PlayStation and Nintendo.
Okay.
Granted, PlayStation's not really a factor yet because PS5s are still so hard to come by. Xbox Series X's, which is their primary $500 console, those are still extremely hard to get. But you're seeing a lot of the $300 console, which is all digital Xbox Series S. Those I've seen actually a fair amount, especially in the last like month and a half. The Target by me, it seems like they always have one or two in stock. When I went back to Arizona briefly, the Target that I usually go to had a couple Walmarts occasionally. I don't know if it's part of that's also selling out. But you're actually seeing that, and that's really the only piece of next gen tech that you're seeing on the gaming side. So I'm sure that's a large reason why. Granted, though, also it's a big upgrade in a lot of ways over the Xbox One X. Naming is not the best in terms of confusion. The Xbox One X was their primary console, and they added series to it for next gen, essentially, or just the newer versions. But I was watching a lot of comparisons recently because I'm thinking of selling mine and upgrading to have a portable one because I've had a Series X for a while. It's what you and I game on in our free time at night with some of our other friends. But I was looking just to see like the actual specs of like, does it even make sense? Because like that was the most powerful console on the market, and then now is the budget version better? And actually, in a lot of ways, it is. And it's only $300. So it's actually a very good value, which is I think why it's probably selling very well. And they actually beat PlayStation on like the cheapest console, because PlayStation has a digital only, but it's still the same PS5. It just doesn't have the disc drive, so it saves $50 on the price. But yeah, so just some little insight on the gaming side for Microsoft. The one thing that will be interesting, like I said, is if that Activision deal goes through, because Activision I think just got killed in their earnings. I believe I saw.
I actually, I forgot about that. I read that report and then I sold half of my Activision position because I'm like, I'm only going to hold this. Like, I need to assume that the deal is not going through. And then if I need to be comfortable holding for the long term at the current price. And that report was really bad. So like, I still think the deal will probably go through, but like I need to assume that it's not in order to justify holding.
Yeah, the other thing you have to realize though with Activision is like this is the worst probably quarter for games.
Yeah,
it's away from holidays. On top of that, also, you're coming out of COVID, so less people are probably staying at home. Kids are back in school in person, so that hurts. But the other thing too is just you can't buy next gen hardware. So all the games and everything like that that's selling. I mean, granted, a lot of stuff is digital and you can play on past consoles, but like a lot of people don't even have access to play on the current stuff. Like I said, PS5s are virtually impossible. You have to pay like $700-800 still to get one. People are just scalping them and selling them on StockX or eBay or wherever.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying. The Xbox, like even the Xbox Series X, I was very lucky to get mine at retail. But like even those are selling for like $600-700. But that's why I'm saying I think that's why Xbox had a big, or Microsoft Xbox had a big advantage in quarter 1, because they actually were able to get Xbox Series S's into the wild, and into stores. Nintendo Switch did come out with a newer version of their Switch. It's technically the 3rd version of the like core Switch, not the Switch Lite. They went from the launch Switch, which was like March 3rd, 2017, I think, day after my birthday, or senior year. And then they came out with basically the same one with just a better battery and a slightly better screen. It was better. It was more the battery. And then now they just came out with one where it has a slightly larger screen on the same body, because the borders on the Switch are just horrific. Like it made no sense why they have these big black borders around the screen, of why they just didn't stretch it out. So they have like the 3rd version of the same thing. So I don't think that's going to drive too many sales. And also those are hard to get as well. But big Nintendo fan. I've been invested. That was the first stock I ever bought. I think their IP is just great, but yeah, just some insight on that side. But I think that probably led to that. And then cloud, obviously them and Amazon just have such a strong arm over the entire industry. But one thing that I think was interesting about Microsoft is just they're consistent, just revenue through all these different areas. And yet LinkedIn being a big one too, even through the advertising. I remember Gary Vee was talking about LinkedIn's kind of the new Facebook, like Facebook ads was kind of the big place to go to target an audience. And he's like, LinkedIn's now the next step. And he's been saying this for like a year and a half, maybe 2 years even. And he was just saying it's because you can get so specific to your target audience on LinkedIn. And it's literally, it's beautiful. Like if you want to reach like age, profession, male or female, like everything, you can get targeted exactly. So it was just interesting kind of to hear that. And then now kind of seeing on the other end that through the earnings report that it is doing extremely well.
It's growing fast. Yeah. Microsoft, they just kill it every quarter.
Well, that was the other thing I was going to lead into, is the fact of like all these, like the fifth, what are they trying to, Activision, what was that, 50 billion, something like that?
That's 50-60 billion dollar acquisition.
I was hearing someone talk about it. It's like, that's just a couple months revenue for them, like, or like not even, maybe it's a month, whatever. Like they can easily like buy an Activision every quarter, essentially, like, and be kind of unaffected. Like they're just able to consume these types of companies and be like unaffected, like in terms of having to worry about, capital. And it's just nuts. Like it's such an argument. Like in one of my classes, like in my econ class, was talking about like monopolies, just like companies that are able to like vertically integrate and just absolve like everything. But at the same time, like when you have, like I said, the big 4, big 5, whatever, including Tesla, including not, when you have that many, at least that's the competition. But it's just like there's so much upside to the way the so-called monopolies are being run right now, because there's so much security. Like things aren't going bankrupt. Things are going actually more secure with a company that's well established with big funding. It's like, it's in some ways, it's actually a good system. You just need to not have only one of those companies. Like the one I would argue is Disney on the other end. Less competition maybe in the media space. But even then, the products they make are very friendly for the consumer. And like I said, allows more things to occur and be made. So it's like, it's a fascinating topic. But right. it's just weird seeing, like I said, as all these companies, it seems like anything that becomes successful is just able to be bought out by one of the big, big tech companies. It's interesting.
I think that leads into a question that I think is really interesting, is which of the big tech companies do you think is the least likely to be disrupted over the long term? So,
well, okay,
Apple, Microsoft.
When you mean disrupted, do you mean by competition, by the government? Like, what do you mean?
Competition. Apple, Microsoft, Amazon.
So I'll tell you, it was interesting. Talking with one of my friends, I'll say, he was talking about how Apple, with like, because I mentioned to you, I'm doing some bookkeeping, and he uses Google Sheets, which I was like, I would like to learn on Excel, because that's what the business world uses. And if I'm going to like really adapt the skill, learning on Excel will be more, universal.
Yes.
It's fine. But he was just talking about, he's like, oh, I think Google's like, actually, I guess, sorry, I take that back. So this isn't Apple, but it's tied to, but it's just like, I think Google's going to like take over the workplace. And I'm like, yes and no, because one of the big issues with that is Microsoft already is so integrated into all these businesses, and they offer every part of it, like with Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Microsoft Teams to compete with Zoom. And that's another topic I actually want to get into. And then Windows, it's like the operating system. It's like they already have like this whole integration for business specifically. That I'm just like, it's very hard. And the other big thing they have is security. They're because they have this, obviously they know what they need to prioritize, and security is a big one for them. And the fact that they have the cloud services also greatly benefits them. Google could somewhat compete, but their big angle is most stuff for free. Now they charge for Google Drive expansion and all that stuff, but like, it's not as secure because it's online. And it hasn't been like, I feel like as big as Google is, they would have been able to disrupt more of the business industry than they have by now. Now, where they have done it some is schools. Schools greatly do use Google over, I think, Microsoft services a lot, like obviously 365 and everything. So that's one area where I think they have inserted themselves. But then the thing with Apple versus, say, Microsoft or just PC in general, because he was also saying how much better Apple products are. I'm like, yes, Apple products are great, but the problem is they come at a high price point. Like Microsoft Windows can go on a $300, PC, and most businesses are probably buying $500 to $700 PCs, putting their own firmware and security on it, and then putting Windows on it. You're not going to be able to do that on an Apple, because Apple doesn't want you to be able to also change the operating system as much as most businesses do for security reasons. So it's just like they're kind of, Google and Apple have kind of locked themselves out in a way, especially Apple, because Apple also targets more of the creative audience, which is also where this individual isn't more in, which makes sense because, I'm on an Apple product right now, but I use a PC for all my school and all my other work. But it is a fascinating thing with the hardware, because Apple, even the ads, you look at the ads, it's like Microsoft tailors a lot more towards like business side of things. They've tried some creative ads. Apple's if you're a musician, if you're a video editor, if you just more leisure time, like that's, if you want to integrate with your iPhone, if it's more just a casual laptop, it's like that's the ecosystem, that's the target audience for them. It's not necessarily the hardcore corporate.
Right. So basically you would say Microsoft is the least likely to be disrupted?
Well, I'd say Microsoft or Google, because Apple has always worried me. They've changed. My opinion has greatly changed, especially since it's about 8% of my portfolio. And for years, I told you I will never invest in Apple. And the big reason why is because I'm like, their iPhone, granted, it's like 26% of, I think, of their revenue, but it's like they don't innovate the iPhone. The iPhone's pretty much perfection in a lot of ways. And obviously things are always going to incrementally get better, but there's no like big change they're going to be able to make, at least in the near future that we can see. Now, eventually there probably will be with new technology. Maybe that's the metaverse, if that's, you know,
VR, yeah,
truly a thing, VR, augmented reality, that stuff could change stuff. But like where we're currently at, we have limitations. We've reached kind of the max potential for the iPhone. And the operating system is where they sell. But it's just, if they lose just that, like think of how damaged their business is, because they're less on the, and they've gotten better now with Apple TV, like literal Apple TV, not the product, which I think is an awful naming scheme that they should have done something different with. Because my parents, having to explain that to my parents the first time was very, you need an Apple TV to watch Apple TV, essentially. It's just name it something else. I don't know. But anyways, so Apple I'm a little worried about because they're very product based. Now, granted, they make great products and they do have great software, but their software is only on their products. So if their products ever aren't cool, or, you know, another company does come out, because like look at Tesla car company is coming out as now a cooler car. You know, a lot of old fashioned car companies are kind of struggling now to possibly keep up if things do go electric. So it's something like that where I fear a little bit with Apple, because they're less subscription and software based. Now they do have those elements. I just don't think they have as big of a stronghold though. That is like lasting over time. Because the other thing you have to think of, like with Windows, is like they're on Windows 11 now, I think. Like that's 11 years of progress of things that already have been working. It's gonna be very hard for a new company to come in and start on their, you know, new version 1 competing against something that's been running for 25, 30 years. So I would say Microsoft and then Google, because Google has the search engine that just seems like no one can touch. And YouTube's then now number 2. So I think they have a big stronghold through their search engines, which I don't see changing anytime soon. And then Microsoft has it just through corporate. And then, like I said, also from the cloud services. Amazon will be there too. I think Google, Amazon, and Microsoft are 3 that are going to be untouched for a very long time. I think Apple is probably the next closest. Facebook's the one that's going to have to reinvent itself a little bit.
Yeah, I think we both agree that Facebook has the narrowest moat of all those for sure. I think it's Microsoft. I don't see how Windows will be disrupted. I don't see how Office will be disrupted. I don't see how any other cloud player will come in to disrupt the it's basically turned into an oligopoly between Microsoft, Amazon, and then Google is still quite a bit behind, but those 3 are going to dominate.
The bigger thing, just to quickly chime in too, because I think you have some thoughts on Facebook, or we can get into that discussion. But the other thing too with Microsoft is it's not only the fact of it's like, is Office and Windows the best product? It's the fact of, are you really willing to have to reteach your entire workforce, an entire another system? It doesn't make sense from a business standpoint. So it's like they even have that. So like even if there is a better product, it is going to be so hard to convert that many people. And the other thing too, this is the last thing I wanted to get into because I'm going to forget it, is like the other thing going back on the big tech kind of things too, is for Zoom. Like Zoom obviously has taken off. We're using Zoom currently. We might try something else in the future, but right now it's great. Obviously the pandemic really brought a lot of people to Zoom. Microsoft, people are already paying for Office 365. They already were given Microsoft Teams. That's part of what they're already paying for. So why not use it? It's already integrated into everything. But the bigger thing to me is Microsoft can create even if they didn't have Teams, they could just create, like Google even did this, and they obviously had like video chat, but they added it to Gmail. They were able to completely overhaul and create it. They're able to fund projects like this to compete with people like Zoom that only are this video chat software essentially. Google, Microsoft, Amazon, they could just literally create, a small team to have them make it, operate it on a loss. But if it brings more people to the platform, it generates more profit. It's just like casinos. It's like they offer the rooms cheap because they know you're going to probably buy alcohol and gamble, which is where they're going to make their money, or spend the money on shows. It's just like, it's the same concept. It's going to be very hard for companies that are like only one need that is easy replicable. It's like, even look at social media, Snapchat, they added stories. Instagram added stories, Facebook
Yep.
added stories. It's just like these companies could just add it. It's like it's very hard for, you know, new companies to take off and then kind of control. So it will be interesting to see kind of if there is anything new, because we saw TikTok. That's a new social media that just came out of nowhere. Granted, obviously Vine in the past was something we were lacking. We didn't have that short form content video app. And YouTube's already adapted to have YouTube Shorts, but
Yeah.
it seems like TikTok is more relevant than ever now, even with YouTube adding that. Now, granted, that is seeing the revenue side for some people I know in that industry, it is doing extremely well. But people aren't leaving TikTok.
Yeah, it's possible, but very difficult to compete with those big tech companies.
Unless you have big funding like Elon.
Yeah.
You have some billionaire, you know, creates one great company that is able to sell, get 50 billion or whatever, however much you got for PayPal, and then, you know, start creating more stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Any thoughts on Facebook for like what they need to do, or if you think they're going to be relevant in the future?
No thoughts. I see you.
I mean, just it's one of those things of I think Mark Zuckerberg's too smart to go away.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I will say, and I heard this even recently on a podcast I watched, which is a very interesting point, and I think you and I have had this discussion. Facebook as a social media platform is pretty dead. Obviously, the older demographic still uses it. There are still games on it. There is content still being made for it that caters to people that do still use it. But the younger audience is not using Facebook at all. However, the one thing I do see myself using Facebook for is Facebook groups. That is the one thing that I feel like no one else is able to replicate so far that Facebook still has done very well. And I remember they were even advertising it on TV with like solely just Facebook groups. And it's intriguing to me because from everywhere I've heard, and I'm in a couple, it's like it really is kind of the best communities if you have a really small niche, or if like you want to meet people, you know, in your city or in your state that are into your same hobbies. It really is the best place to go. And there are very great communities on there. So it's not even the fact that they just exist, like they're actually very thriving communities.
Right.
So it's just that's intriguing to me. So it's like they've got that. And then the other one I've never used because I just use OfferUp for this stuff, but Facebook Marketplace, that's another one that is extremely big. So I don't know, does Facebook create, you know, does Facebook change the way actually Facebook looks to be just Facebook groups, and then have kind of like how Messenger is a spinoff app? You have Facebook groups have Facebook Marketplace be a spinoff app. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. Obviously, they're making that big push towards the metaverse. We'll see if that ever comes to fruition.
They also they own WhatsApp, which is huge, like outside of the United States.
Don't get me started with WhatsApp, dude. My team uses that. I'm getting so many spam messages on WhatsApp right now.
I am too, actually. Yeah.
But you are correct. All my foreign teammates and anyone I've ever met, like when I went to Australia, like WhatsApp's exactly what you use. And it's a huge platform that they acquired. And that's what, even what the other thing is, it's like, obviously they acquired Instagram too, and WhatsApp, which are two of the biggest social media, if you want to call it WhatsApp, but like two of the biggest platforms people do use. Mm-hmm. So it's like they're relevant through that still, but Facebook as we know it, like it really needs kind of an overhaul, or to even be shut down and just rebranded.
Yeah, I think it is still big internationally too, like the Facebook core app. Like,
yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, we're very US biased here. Yeah, it's true. Because I was gonna say, like, one, maybe it's not Instagram, maybe Facebook. I think Facebook, actually, my one South African teammate, I think everyone still used Facebook. They didn't really use Instagram. And the one they really didn't use was Snapchat, which really surprised me. Like, he says, like, no one uses Snapchat. And I was just like, that's like, I'm not saying obviously no one, but like, it's just not as like, you need to have one.
Yeah.
So I thought that was fascinating. Yeah. You're always, like I said, humbled when you hear, you know, not only other opinions, but other cultures and what they go to. But yeah, I think Facebook will survive. I'm not worried about them becoming a MySpace. One, they're too big of a company for that.
Yeah.
But it'll be fascinating to see though the actual Facebook app, what they do going forward, because I have a feeling it's going to change drastically. Like, if not just be simplified and just transitioned over to, like I said, what's actually working. But yeah. I wouldn't be. The thing that shocked me is that Facebook hasn't tried going back to its roots and being a business platform, or like having a spinoff to compete with LinkedIn, because that's originally what Facebook was. And it shocked me that they haven't tried to kind of copy again.
Yeah, wasn't it originally like it was for college campuses,
Yeah.
and then
Yeah, it was for
I don't
college
know.
campuses and for like business young, but it was basically, like I said, an early LinkedIn.
Yeah,
And then it turned into what we know now as a social media, because it was, I mean, it was really kind of the first social media outside of MySpace.
right.
And then yeah, obviously it just kind of kept growing, and the company became, now it has hardware, glasses, Portal. They have Quest they bought. That's another big one too. They have the simplest, best VR headset for people to buy that is wire free. And I think they even just rebranded it from being Oculus Quest to Meta Quest. So they're really trying to hammer that Meta rebranding.
Yeah, I wish I had more to add on Meta, but I'm not allowed to own it, so I haven't ever really looked at it that closely. So
What's the last time you logged on to Facebook?
logged on? It's been a while, probably years, but
yeah, it's kind of crazy. The other thing too that I'm surprised, and I don't know why it's gone away. Maybe it's Apple that's kind of stepped in the way of this. Speaking of Apple also kind of really derailed a lot of Facebook's revenue because of the targeting marketing on their side for collecting data. But that's kind of, I feel like a lot of people have touched on that and articles came out on that. But plus that's just kind of, a feud between the two. But oh shoot, I lost my train of thought. Facebook, where was I going with that? Oh, that's gonna drive me crazy.
This is something about Apple. I don't know.
No, it was before that. Oh well.
Well, we can do you have any other thoughts on big tech or?
No, it's like I said, it's a fascinating topic to me because obviously it's scary when companies have too much control. But at the same time, if those companies are still doing good and providing a lot of jobs, higher wages, more security, allowing other businesses to thrive that they absolve or buy. Like I said, as long as there's competition, I don't have much of an issue with it. The other thing too, I was going to say, with Microsoft, that's fascinating is Microsoft's usually not included in a lot of those government meetings when big
they
tech
seem to handle regulation better.
Well, not only that too, I feel like they're less, they control people less, if that makes sense. Like they don't have a social media, they don't have a search engine that's relevant enough.
They have LinkedIn.
I guess that's true. Yeah. And like I said, if that keeps growing, maybe that's where they'll transition to. Yeah, that's a fair point. LinkedIn might be the one where they get in a little bit of trouble.
I get your point though, that their main clients are like businesses rather than like consumers. Yep. So that must be why.
But LinkedIn, like you said, that's a fair point. It's a fair point.
Yeah. Well, so another company that announced earnings this week was Teladoc, or that was today.
Oh, that's right.
And
do you own Teladoc?
No.
I have a few shares, not many, but
so I think that one was down like 30% after hours, and it's because of this enormous goodwill impairment charge they recorded of it was like $41 per share loss in Q1, which is crazy because their current price is about 38. So basically by GAAP accounting, they lost more than their entire current market cap, like after the fall. Wow. So basically they lost like 50% of their market cap in one quarter, according to GAAP accounting. But that is a non-cash charge. So it's not like that was a cash outflow of that much, but yeah, just really, I've never seen a goodwill charge that large before.
Well, you know what's interesting? One of your favorite investors, I mean that sarcastically, Cathie Wood.
It's like her second largest.
She's having, I was gonna say she's having an interesting week because she has a huge holding in Twitter. So if that does, like obviously the buyout did happen, so obviously she's profiting a lot from that. But then she's getting crushed with Teladoc because I believe they own like 7% of Teladoc in the ARK Invest account.
Yeah, she's had a fun time this year.
Yeah. Although Tesla, like I said, Tesla's been holding up, so that's looking good in the account at least. But obviously, it's down from its all-time high because it was like 1320 at one point, and it's around 1,000 right now.
Yeah. What I don't like about, I mean, she concentrated in the correct one, although they've sold that position down a lot.
Well, it's
which
like I
is
said, it's
surprising.
because it grew so much, though, is the problem. They were
Yeah,
so concentrated in it.
But like, if they say their price target's like 4,000 in 4 years. So
Yeah,
like,
that's fair.
if you actually believe that, why would you sell? Even if
fair.
it's 80% of your portfolio, like,
Yeah.
so anyway.
I mean, the only thing I would say to that is maybe it's the risk aversion. If you're wanting people to invest into your fund, it's hard to be so concentrated. I think that's probably where it comes from.
That's a good point. Yeah.
But it's one of those things of why are you selling as much, maybe? But yeah, I mean,
because I think they've sold
if ARK was more than 15%, like if Tesla was more than 15% of ARK, like, I mean, you wouldn't touch it to begin with, but like, that's going to draw a lot of people away that don't believe in Tesla.
True. Or if it was like 50% Tesla, they'd be like, why don't I just buy Tesla and I don't get charged the 2% a year?
Well, that's the funny thing. One of the people I watch, he actually has a website, I think, that tracks Cathie Wood, and he's like big critic because I think she also has Roku as a big holding, which I love Roku. I don't understand what Roku offers though. So like, he doesn't understand
how they make money.
Yeah, I don't get it. Like, obviously they're tied to a lot of TVs, so I know they're getting they're the software on a lot of TVs nowadays. True, so that has to obviously be part of it. But it's like, I don't know what else there is. They're not really a streaming platform. No. But outside of that, it's just like there's a lot of stocks he doesn't understand that are in the ARK Invest, even though he does like Cathie Wood. And obviously they're both, this individual and Cathie Wood are obviously big believers on Tesla. But he's just like, yeah, if you like Cathie Wood, just look at the ARK Invest and just invest in the 5 stocks you like the best versus investing in ARK Invest, which is basically exactly what you're saying. It's like, if you
and you don't get charged the 2%, they charge a hefty fee. I just, my problem with Cathie Wood is when she says stuff like, oh, we expect a 50% annual return over the next 5 years. Like, you're not going to achieve that. Like, I'll bet everything I have that you will not achieve that. You're just sucking in like dumb retail money into your fund because you get 2%.
Yeah.
And it's just, I think it's kind of a dirty practice, but we'll see. Maybe she will. Maybe she will do 50% a year.
Well, like I said, she's riding the momentum of obviously last year. She's getting crushed this year, but
it's actually, I checked today, it's back to where it was in February 2020.
Yeah, that's why I said, and it ran like crazy in 2020.
Yeah, it went, I think its peak was like 140 and today it's 48. And I wouldn't be surprised if it goes way lower.
Probably.
But I mean, I don't want to be too tough because like, obviously that's it's hard to manage people's money to be an investment manager. And a lot of people are actually losing a lot of money right now. And that's very difficult. So
anything else you got?
I have nothing else to add this week. Going to Berkshire in 2 days. So next week I'll be talking about that for sure.
Back to our old faithful.
Yes.
Warren Buffett. First time you seeing him in person?
It'll be the first time.
I'm jealous.
Hopefully not the last time. Hopefully
I can join you. Hopefully I can join you next year.
Yeah.
All right.
Please do.
Well, I think we'll wrap it up for this episode. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you guys next week.